The challenge of taking the economy green has to take many different layers, not just a local, but it sometimes can be cross-border. And here's an example where the Amazon rainforest effectively is a water pump, and that ability of that water pump to, through evapotranspiration, seed the rainfall, which then provides water to the La Plata Basin, and therefore feeds the entire agricultural economy of Latin America, that entire region, of $1 trillion per annum. The loss of the rainforest is not just a biodiversity problem, it's going to be an irrigation problem at some point. So it's very much in the interest of those nations to get together and solve that as a problem. Here's an example of ecological services becoming economic issues in a very humongous way in this particular instance. We have a process here within TEEB where we are looking for examples like the Amazon water pump that I talked about, and we are reaching out to especially the businesses, because there is actually a separate disclosure project, a separate opportunity and costs and disclosure project, which is focusing ecosystems and biodiversity towards the corporation. And I look forward to contributions from all of you. Just Google TEEB and you'll reach a website and you can drop us an email. It's really as simple as that. Opportunity as well. We're not just talking about costs and disclosures and risks. Opportunities I'm deliberately picking here one which is unfamiliar, because this is about the opportunity of protected area conservation. And I see this as an opportunity because if we look at the ecosystem services provided by the 100,000 protected areas, very few of those protected areas actually have any interaction with the private sector. And yet, if we look at any perspective, natural capital or revenues, the flow of services is bigger than the combined total of the car industry, the steel industry, and the IT sector, and yet the total people employed, as an example of what's invested in it, is actually a tiny fraction of those numbers. So there is huge opportunity here, and somehow there's a kind of phobia within governments, and I use a word used in the CITES report, actually, it's not my thinking, the phobia against involving the private sector towards protected area management. And yet, we do get involved in things like city waste management and city road network management and so on. So I see no reason why another utility, protected areas, should not involve the private sector. Apart from mapping jobs in sort of somewhat obscure areas, we are also mapping jobs potential in pretty much the mainstream, such as renewable energy, buildings, et cetera, and we've done some of the work already. And the answers are quite staggering. So as Achim Steiner also mentioned in his conversation, we're coming up with some rather significant job opportunities in these sectors across the sort of countries where we have started our analysis. Remarkably, places like South Korea with their Million Jobs Creation Program, out of those 350,000 are just in river cleaning and afforestation. So there are huge opportunities for employment in sectors which do not typically enter our minds as classical or traditional areas of business and the economy. And yet they are. These are real jobs and they're doing real work and they're getting real money for it. I'd just like to remind ourselves of our context today. Here's a graph which should be familiar to all of you. It's the S&P chart for the last 14 odd years. And you see that sort of period of green in between where that was the post-Asian crisis and around the sort of 7 years of plenty that involved relaxed liquidity norms, low interest rates, relaxed lending norms, low credit spreads, and effectively fed a GDP growth-driven boom in the global economies. And effectively, we borrowed too much money over a protracted period of time and faced effectively what I call not a failure of markets, but a success of markets. It's a rather sharp and punitive success because markets corrected equities in this instance back to where they should have been, I guess, in the first place. And the question that comes to me is that if this sort of market correction were ever to happen in the world of natural capital to punish us for the ecological debt that we have taken, mirroring, of course, the physical credit debt that we have taken in the financial markets, God help us, because that could be really sharp. But we don't have to go there. And the good news is that if we work our way towards a green economy, which is less consumptive of materials, low user of energy, and using clean energy as against fossil fuel energy, then I think there is a solution. We do not have to face that situation. We do not have to borrow ecological debt to the extent that we are doing today, hence the argument for the green economy. So in conclusion, I will say the green economy is a new engine for growth. And by the way, this is a real engine. It was designed by General Electric. Its beauty is that it uses the same braking system as my Prius does, which means that as it brakes, it regenerates electricity. It's a massive 1-ton molten salt kind of cell. And net result is that its emissions are less than 50% of emissions, and its energy use is less than 20% of a normal engine. And the best part, it goes into production next year. So ladies and gentlemen, it's all possible. Thank you.